Hey guys, we're back with another incredible episode of Career Talks. You ready? Good evening, everybody, and welcome back to another session. I call it session or episode of Career Talks podcast. As always, I'm your host Orlando Haynes. Uh, got a phenomenal guest. But before I bring on in about 2 seconds, just make sure you subscribe, support the podcast, because the goal again is to provide actionable advice for job seekers that'll help them in their career and ultimately their life and impact them again throughout that journey of whatever that looks like for them in their career. If you're just tuning in or jumping in or be with us during the duration of this conversation, the power of the pivot, definitely get your questions ready. Say hello, everything you can to participate. We'd love to see you and get some dialogue going from audiences and have my guests field those questions. But without further ado, I have an incredible young lady who I've watched her content on LinkedIn and her overall energy and aura and how she presents. She is all the way real. So 100% real, authentic. She will tell you like a TI is. I can't wait for her to come on and share her energy. But she's the VP of HR. She's the president of the Elevate Her LLC organization, a career coach. She has her own show on LinkedIn here. It's called The Morning Mindset. Let me welcome Miss Nakisha Hicks to the program. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be here.
Looking forward to it. I'm excited you're here. I'm excited you took the time. It was a quick reach out. Again, you responded quick, and I've been lucky and blessed to connect with folks who are like, yeah, let's do it. Hey, we're talking about helping folks out there in this
hmm
space called career development and the future of work. So I love that. So let me turn it over to you. Share a little bit more about who Nakisha Keisha is, and we'll dive in.
Yeah, we're not gonna use Nakisha. That's too government. That's my government name for when I'm in trouble. Okay, we're not using that.
Gotcha, Keisha. It's
Okay,
Keisha.
we're gonna use Keisha. So hello everybody. Who am I? I am a wife. I am a mom first and foremost. Before I put on all them other titles, right? I'm just a around the way type of girl too. So I like to hang out with my family, my friends. But when I'm not doing that, I am helping the unders, those people that are underemployed, undervalued, underappreciated in their workplaces. My thing is to help them to figure that thing out and to really get on the path that they need to get on so that they can make their lives, the best that they can, to have the things, the lifestyles that they want and all that. And I do that specifically with HR folks. Why? Because that's what I know. I mean, HR is not something that I'm new to. I always say I'm not new here. I grew here. I
Mm,
started off in HR when I was 17. So
wow.
um, I use that and flex it. So that's who I
Love it. Love it. I'm not new here. I grew here. So,
am.
so I mean, you have an in-depth experience and journey in HR from, going through the ranks, HR director, senior director, etc., and VP. Uh, and now your passion, I see, is turned towards helping, like you just mentioned, the underpaid and the undervalued HR professionals out there.
Mhm.
Where did that come from?
Here's the thing. I, I think whenever we look at coaches, I think it's always important to show their receipts, right?
Mm,
And I think for
mm,
me, the biggest receipt that a coach can share or show you is the receipt that they have for themselves, right? And so for me, when I thought about it, I was like, I looked back over my career in HR and how many times I felt like I was undervalued, how many times I know I was underpaid because we are HR and we see how much people get paid, right? Right. Like all of those times when looking like me, I felt like I couldn't advocate for myself because I was in a room where I was an only, right?
Mm.
Not having that community, not having that support. And I was like, you know what? I need to develop programs, curriculum, all the things geared towards helping people that were like me or are like me. So that's what the focus is about.
I love that. Love that. So we are going to dive into the topic of this evening, which you chose. And I love that topic, the power of the pivot.
Yeah.
But before we do that, I want to ask you too about what what made you start Elevate Her. And I'm not sure if you answered that in the previous question,
Yeah.
but what made you start Elevate Her?
The Elevate Her was one of those things I went kicking and screaming actually to start. I
Mm.
didn't want to. You know, sometimes you just caught in your I don't want to. You like people are like, oh, but you should do this. You're like, I don't
I
want
don't
to.
want to.
But you're really good at this. I don't want to. Right.
I don't want to do all that. I ain't
I
gonna do
don't
all
want
that.
I don't want to be bothered with that, right? I already
Mm.
got all this other stuff I'm doing. But the more I became bothered with it, so to speak, right? The more I started seeing the outcomes that was really supposed to happen. And I'm a God girl. And I was like, okay, God, this what you want me to do? Cool. Then figure this thing out for me because I don't really know how to do this from a business standpoint. And so that was kind of the nudge was like, you know what, there are people who were my mentees that were saying, you know what, how do I wrap myself around your ankle and help me and go with you as you go places, right?
Mm.
And then it was when COVID hit, when Auntie Rona hit, I was like, wait a minute. It was so sad to me to watch the unemployment rates for Black women in comparison to every other race, right? You were talking about double digits. And I was just like, wait a minute, there's got to be something that I can do. So the Elevate Her, that was it. I mean, I started doing free job search classes and networking mixers and you name it. I was doing it because it was like, that's a way to elevate people. And so that's what I wanted to do. And that's where the Elevate Her came from. And we've been rocking ever since. So we're going to keep
Love it. And the morning mindset,
rocking.
the morning mindset, you do that 8 a.m. Is that a set day or just
Wednesday mornings, we're going
every
to get you
Wednesday
over the
morning?
hump. We're going to get you over the hump.
Okay.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
is that specific to work, or is it just really about the thought process, the mindset shift?
You know, here's the thing. It actually started back in February-ish of this year, and it was on Clubhouse.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
used to host a room, a daily room in a club called the Black Women in Human Resources Club. And it started with, I was like, you know what? I'm a big fan of morning routines. I think that your morning routine or whatever you get up, that's your morning routine. But whenever, you know, that really kicks off and really determines what happens throughout your day. And part of that is getting your mind right. It's kind of like suiting up for battle, especially if you're an HR person, because you think about it, all we do is solve people's problems all day long. How do
Right.
I do this? This person don't want to act right. What about this? Right. So you have to suit up. You have to battle, you know, because you're about to go into battle. And not to mention when all the COVID stuff happened, that was a lot for us.
Mm.
And so I was just like, you know what? Here's what I do to get my mind right. It's a part of my morning routine. And so from there, birth the morning mindset. And I did it every single weekday morning um, for like 3, 4 months. It is not then when I was like, okay, I'm done with it. I turned it over. The space is still going strong. My good friend Kim Blue has it now. She calls it the blueprint. It's dope, right? So
Okay.
I make appearances over there. Um, and so then I was like, you know what? People kept saying, when is it coming back? And I was like, well, okay, let's resurrect it like Lazarus. So I was like, come on, get on up,
Lazarus.
Lazarus, get on up.
Exactly.
And so, yeah, so this is the third week of us bringing it back, but this time live on LinkedIn so that we could hit another group, another audience space.
Awesome. Awesome. I'll be
Hmm.
sure to tune in for sure tomorrow
Yeah.
morning at 8. Awesome. And that's Eastern Standard Time, folks. So
Yeah.
uh, let me just say hello to a few folks who said hello to us. Garen, appreciate you, man. Deborah, appreciate you for joining. And I see a couple of more, but again, make sure to share your comments or questions or anything as we progress in this conversation. So we are
Mhm.
here to talk about the power of the pivot.
Yeah.
Share with us your thought process on that right there, because that's huge.
Yeah. Okay. So we have big thing going on right now called the Great Resignation, right? Some people are calling
Mhm.
it the Great Resurgence. They're
Mhm.
great, you know, all these different things you can call it. The I don't like y'all no more, so I quit. You know, I want to do something else.
That's
Somebody,
for
you know,
sure.
That's what it is, right? Auntie Rona making me think about my life a little different. Life is too short for this. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Um,
Right.
but we're also at the end of a year, right? And as we close out a year, it is the time to think about pivoting, right? It is really the time to think about, is this really what I want to do next year? Is there something that I can improve upon next year? Or is this something I just want to be like, nope, let's go a whole different direction? The thing is that we have the power to do it.
Hmm.
But I think sometimes it's not necessarily skill set that keeps us from pivoting. It's our mindset that keeps us from pivoting.
Mm. Yep. And I wonder, as you were just saying that, so the question is, why did it take that we're seeing at this massive scale? Did it take this global, pandemic to jolt everybody into like there's some kind of awakening or shift I need to make in my life? Like,
I, I, I just think, you know what, I think it was just that it was a shaking that happened, right?
mhm,
It was huge. I mean, when you talk about, I'm gonna shut down the world, where you got to just stay in the house. Sometimes you got to stay in the house with people you like, you still here, you still breathing. I got to feed y'all again, right? All day.
mm,
Like, you know, that did something to people. And then if you were, heaven forbid, you were by yourself, like it made you have to really get into you and really rediscover who you are. And, I love when Joyce Meyer says, everywhere you go, there you are. So
mm,
you really had to face yourself, and you really had to face the things that perhaps you were running away from. And then, not to mention, then you couple that with loss, job loss, and people were losing their homes and losing family members. I mean, that right there, I think it just shook people like, hold on, let's
yeah,
reevaluate.
that's true. So
Hmm.
interesting. Let me know if this makes sense. So you talked about briefly about having a routine, right? So
Hmm.
there's the mindset there that you get up and do whatever you do, whether you think you don't have a routine, you have a routine because you do the same
Yep.
thing.
Hmm.
Now, with this power of pivoting, it's going to cause a major mind shift in you to pivot. You got to
Hmm.
overcome so many things: fear.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, what's the other words I'm looking for? Something like
That's a
imposter
lot.
syndrome, anything,
Self-doubt, all of those things.
doubt.
Hmm.
What are some conversations you're having with folks that you're coaching that they're coming up with? Is it just those, or it's something like really like?
No, I mean, you know what was something that's starting to kind of emerge is this feeling of guilt.
Mm,
You know,
mm,
and if you think about it, like I had to think about it in my own context, like me getting ready to leave this position that I've been in, there was a measure of guilt I felt about it,
yeah,
right? Like you're leaving something, right? It's like I'm breaking up with you, right? So,
yeah,
so
yeah.
you had to pull out the breakout line. It's not you, it's
It's
me. I'm selfish right now, right? Right? Like you got to pull that out for it even
uh,
to work. But there's a
right,
measure of guilt that people feel. They feel like they're leaving people behind,
yeah,
right? There's this guilt of feeling like, you know what, I'm doing something for me. Because you think about how many times people, especially when it comes to professional development, they put themselves on the back burner.
yeah,
We'll sacrifice ourselves for everybody else. And then, so that's that guilt that says, you know what, when now for me to say it's my time and it's me now, it's about me. There are people who feel guilty about that. You know, there's the shame that comes with some of this stuff too. I'm like, where is the shame coming from? I'm ashamed of how long it took me to actually get to this point. Well, I'm like, well, yeah, it is what it is, right? I mean, it took you that long because it took you that long.
yeah. And I wonder if that's because a lot of people really identify themselves based on the role or the career first. Like
Hmm.
I'm this person, their title, whatever, and
Hmm.
then it's such an emotional separation that, like you
Hmm.
said, the breakup, and they're not thinking fully through, even though they know they hope it's a better situation because you don't know if the grass is greener, you don't know what that situation is like. Your few minutes of interview slash courtship excited you enough to take the leap, but you just
Hmm.
don't know. So
Hmm.
that's interesting. That's interesting.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
walk us through some of the things that what steps you put in place just for you as you talk about throughout your journey and your career, how you pivoted, and what you're sharing with folks that come across. this struggle or asking you for help?
Yeah. I think first things first is, like one of my favorite movies is Lion King. And
Mm,
when Mufasa takes Simba up and he says, I know who you are,
mhm,
right? So I'm like, that is fundamental. Do you know how many people don't know who they are,
mm,
right? They are getting caught up in the titles of whatever it is that they're called at work or what somebody else called them or whatever, but they don't know fundamentally who they are,
right.
right? And because they don't know who they are, they don't know what they want. And if you don't know what you want, then you'll settle for anything. And so the thing that I fundamentally talk to people about all the time is really getting clear on what it is that you want and being unapologetic about it. And I think that, particularly for people of color, systemically, that's a hard thing to do for us to ask for what we want because we're so used to people just giving us something, handing us something, and we're supposed to be excited or thankful that you handed me the leftovers, so to speak.
Mm,
You handed me the slop in the bucket,
mm.
right? Instead of letting me go pick my own meal and sit at the table with you. That's a whole nother show. That's a whole nother show. But
I
but
thought we was about to go preaching here for a
no,
second.
no, 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 no. That's a whole nother show. But but the bottom line is the first things first is figure out what is it that you want to do, right? And to be super focused on that, niche it down. I talk to people that, I just want to be in HR. I'm like, okay, bring that in a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
like, what exactly do you? I want to help people. I'm like, okay, bring that in a little bit more, right?
Hmm.
Right. So it's really figuring out first and foremost, what is it that you want to do? What is the vision that you have for yourself? If tomorrow was your retirement party, what would you be retiring from? And
Mm,
what's the gap between where you are right now to that point? Right. And
mm,
it's really being intentional about filling that gap. And that's one thing that I had to think about. And like 9 years ago, I didn't even know. I had no clue what I wanted to do at all. I didn't know. I didn't see anybody look like me in a higher role. I didn't know. So I just, threw anything and everything out there because it was about survival, right? Let me take this job because it pays more money. Let me
mhm.
do this because it's the next rung on the ladder, so to speak. But not really understanding how does it align with the ultimate vision that I have for my career and for my lifestyle, right? Because I then have to sit down and ask myself, what is it that I want?
Right. So
So
when
I
it
think
comes,
first and foremost
yeah,
is that.
that's pretty powerful. So let's unpack that piece where you said we were talking about initially is just overall clear, having clarity in your career, right?
Mhm,
Having absolute clarity. But if we was to dive a little deeper, specific to HR practitioners,
mhm,
like you said, it is a tough role. It is a tough role. I
mhm.
love HR folks. I know I would never shift into a role of HR for no amount of money. Can't do it. I know where my talents lie. Talk to us about some of those layers, because I have a lot of HR connections and followers.
Yeah.
Um, what what that looks like on a day to day basis? What
I
some of
mean,
the things you're dealing with?
there are specialist type folks that have just like specialty little areas that they deal in.
Hmm.
For example, recruiters, right? They're the gatekeepers of everybody coming in, but they're also the salesmen too,
Hmm.
right? So that you're trying to match you in a matchmaker. You're trying to match the right candidate with the right hiring manager to hopefully create this synergy that can be a hire, and hopefully a hire that's gonna last a while,
Right.
right? So you have those people, but then you have people like myself. I've been a generalist most of my career, where I've been able to dabble in a little bit of everything. So I'm like the Jane of all trades, right?
Hmm.
Master of about a few, but not a whole lot. But um, it just depends on what you want to do, right? Me personally, I don't like anything operational, technical type stuff. Like like the processing of data and all that, and running reports and files. That's miss me with that. I don't want to do it. Right. Anybody knows me knows I don't like benefits. I don't like payroll. I want to get paid. I want to have insurance, but I don't want to do it. Right. And I appreciate the people that do it because
Right.
I'm sitting there like I could not do that all day. Right. But like recruiting, I don't want to do recruiting. I don't want to be the one to try to figure out is this the right, because to sit there and screen resumes drives me crazy, right? And then to have these phone screen conversations and you interviewing people. And what if the interviews aren't that great all day, right? You like land the plane, just answer the question, right? Right. That's hard. That is hard. But then, you have on the other side, you have people that do employee relations stuff, right? Which I love employee relations and talent development type stuff. I love that piece because that's the piece about helping people to perform at higher levels. But it's also the piece that's like, if somebody ain't acting right, here I go be in the principal's office too. Right? Like, come on in here, sit down. Let me tell you what you did. Take
Uh,
this good detention and go sit down somewhere. I'm about to suspend you for a little while, right? So I think it's depending upon knowing your gifts, knowing what you're strong at, and kind of not just, oh, I want to help people, right? Because again, some days I feel like I'm just a therapist, right? And I was telling my husband this. I said, it feels like some days I'm just taking on everybody else's stuff
yep.
all day, all day. When I'm in the office, it's, hey, Kish, you got 5 minutes, and it ends up being a 30-minute conversation. And before I know it, we're talking about somebody's family and how they need to do this. And so you end up. So again, my HR folks understand it's not just
Oh
about
boy,
helping people. So
it's I mean, you hit it when you said it's like it's a becomes a therapy session,
uh-huh.
and I just can't do it. I can't do it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that and keeping people out the news and out of court.
right, right, and keeping the
Right.
company safe from all kinds of litigations.
All the time. And I have to have those conversations. And sometimes they're difficult conversations when you have a leader that might say, fire them, fire them. And I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. They just did it today. We have never said anything to them about it before. We don't have a policy about it. And now you just want to fire them. You also want to get sued. So
Yeah.
let me help you to not do that. Okay. Because I still need my job.
Uh,
So, yes.
yeah, there's so many stories behind that. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Uh, thanks, Ebony, for joining and your statement there. So the question I had is also now when it comes to the power of the pivot, right?
Yeah.
Um, what's the first step? What's the first? Is it mindset shift for the pivot? And what goes into being able to make a pivot in your career?
Everything is based upon your decision, right? You have to make a decision, a wholehearted decision to say, yes, I'm about to pivot. And sometimes that is the hardest yes that you will ever make because that yes is a ripple yes. Like when you say no to something, like
Mhm.
no is a complete sentence. It shuts stuff down, right? Like, no, can I have it? No. Can we go? No, right? It just shuts stuff down. But when you say yes, like, okay, I said yes to this. What else am I saying yes to? And then I'm saying
Right.
yes to this over here, right? So you have to understand that that pivot requires you to say yes when you normally may say no. But that means that you're going to have to dig into you a little bit more and figure out what is it going to take for me to actually say yes. Who do I need to be to say yes? What do I need to overcome? Right? Because the pivot is scary. I don't know who said, "Oh, it's going to be great," and it's scary
Yep.
because you don't know what's on the other side of it. And if you're used to being in a comfort zone, the pivot is scary. But it's pushing through that fear, pushing past that fear, but it's acknowledging that that fear exists and working through it. So it's a mindset thing first.
And I love what you said about you're saying yes, but you're saying yes to multi-layered things
Hmm.
that you don't even know. You're saying
Hmm.
yes to the idea of the move and like, yeah, it's time, but you have no clue what's for to come behind that. But you still need, in order to execute your pivot, you need to say yes to three, four, five, six, 10 more things to make that
Hmm.
happen. What
Hmm.
what's the what's the word I'm looking for? What is the level of execution you need to have and follow through when it comes to making and saying that first yes?
You got to be decisive and you can't vacillate.
Mm,
Oh, should I say yes? Should I say no? No, once you make that yes, you let your yes be a yes. Go on about it. Okay. Then know that when you said yes to that, here comes the next one. That here comes the next thing you're gonna have to say yes to. Because, for example, when I said yes to I'm gonna leave my job,
hmm
I also said yes to making it public. Right. So then when I made it public, then it was like, oh, here come all these people wanting to talk about it, including the Wall Street Journal. And I was like, oh, you know, So then it's like, do I want to talk about it with them? Well, yes, right? Because here's another yes, right? So it's like you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But you have to just do it. Like it's a Nike season. Just do it. Just do it. Just it's one yes after another, and you just keep going. And when you get ready to say no, remember no shuts everything down.
Yeah.
But when you're in a pivot, whether that's going into a new position or entrepreneurship or whatever it is, it's just you're just saying yes continuously and knowing and having faith because you're also saying yes that you trust yourself and you trust your decisions.
So when does the power come into play? Is it at the
The
initial?
powers is early on. I mean, when you make that, when you say yes that first time, my dog is losing her mind right now. When you say yes that first time, that's when the power, that's when you dig it into the power to make that yes come up out your belly, out your mouth. Right? Like that's power right there to do that. Because there's gonna be everything in you that's gonna say, no, not now. I'll wait. Now is not the good time. Maybe later. Right? There's always going to be that. But the power resides in you being able to say yes and understanding that now I'm fortified in that.
So with that, what are some practical steps that you can, you know, uh, talk about in that power of the pivot? Is it journaling to say, okay, giving myself deadlines and commitments to this is what I'm going to do to start A1, search for something else that I can find. What does that process look like? Don't worry about the dog. Don't worry about the dog.
Is you absolutely like
Yeah. Next you see fur
dog,
flying.
dogs are kids, right? That's what it is. It's either dogs
Don't
or
worry
kids
about
always gonna pop on the screen. I apologize for that. But I think all of those things, right? I think it is one, it's journaling. I never was a huge journal person. I used to be like, that's some old she, frou, whatever. Don't nobody do that for real. Or that's them people. I don't know who those people are, but whoever those people are, they journal. I don't, right? Because I'm not one of those. Um, but I think it is journaling. And it's funny because I have become one of those people. I have many journals, right? And it is being able to really think about who is it that I need to be in that moment, right? To make that next decision. Who is it? What do I need to do? I think it is the power of putting a timeline together. I'm a
it.
huge fan of saying, you know what, put some dates on it because if you keep saying I'm gonna do it when I have time or when I get ready, you ain't gonna never do it. You know, that's like telling like I have teenage boys. That's like telling them, hey, when you get a chance, can you take the trash out? They ain't gonna never get a chance. Not never. Okay. So it's the same thing. So you have to say, no, I need you to do this then, or this is what I'm going to have to do now. And I think also as you're setting those deadlines on yourself or putting those deadlines on yourself, I think it's important to put in many milestones, right?
Mm.
So that you can see the progress and that you can say, okay, I've gotten this far. I've done this. Oh, I only have this little bit left to go. So it doesn't look so huge and scary.
That's good. That's good. How, what are you getting from you do career coaching?
Mhm.
How are you helping them? These HR practitioners. I would assume not all are HR practitioners, but
All of them are.
so you're that's it. That's your fault.
That's
Your fault.
my niche right there. I
Yeah,
don't fool
got
with nobody else for real, for real.
what are some things that you're telling them that you're seeing that say, "Hey, I'm struggling with this." They're giving you the sad story. You've been through it, so you're like, okay, okay. Now
Yeah,
it's like, how do I empower you to
yeah,
start making the shift to make that pivot? Like, how do you know when to pivot? How do they
yeah.
know when to pivot?
So one thing that I often see with my clients is that they are high performers, high achievers. They have all of the degrees that you could ever think of. Okay. They have experience, but they're afraid of their greatness.
Mm,
And so, because they are afraid of their greatness, they will often sell themselves short. So, for example, one could be an HR generalist, but really on paper and in expertise and all the things could easily qualify for business partner or director level, right? But be afraid to do it,
mm,
right? And part of that is because I have to come out. I have to come out of this comfort zone. I have to actually talk about my skill set. I have to understand how to use and leverage transferable skills. I have to talk about how I've showed up as the painkiller and not the vitamin. I have to do all of these things, which I'm not accustomed to because I'm just used to, I have this nice degree. This I can get my foot in the door,
Mm.
and that's where I can go. And so what I have to do is with them is I have to empower them by saying, wait a minute, let's take an inventory of who you are. Know who you are. What is the value that is you, right? We have them do exercises like really thinking about their key accomplishments and not, oh, I just did my job. But what did you really do? What did you really do? And how did you impact your organization in a way that if you weren't there, it would never happen? There was a hole, right? We have them do that. We have them do exercises where they really outline their strengths and not their skills. Like, what are you really strong at? Because there's a difference between a strength and a skill. And so we have them really think about it. And then we say, okay, you may be really strong at something, but do you want to do it? Because just because you're good at something does not mean you want to do it, right?
Right.
I could be the best thing smoking coming around the corner with payroll, but that don't mean I want to do it, right? And I've had clients like that who they have been, wonderful like recruiters, and they're like, but I hate recruiting. I'm like, well, why do you keep doing it? Stop doing what you don't like doing, and instead really settle into the fact I can do something else.
Right.
And so that's a lot of it. It's just really helping them to understand what is it that they're good at, and really helping them to own it.
And how long have you seen that journey and that transformation
Uh,
happen? Because that can be extremely scary, like you said earlier.
mhm, mhm,
Just
mhm,
overcoming that fear of change.
mhm,
Like
mhm.
people just don't like change. There's
Yeah.
some people who just can't
Ex-
adapt
and
to it.
especially if we're stuck in our ways, if we're stuck and this is how it's always been, that's a harder shift.
Hmm.
Um, my program initially started as a 3-month program. And most of the time, by month 3, I saw the shift. But then once my program got a little larger, it was like, wait a minute. Some of the folks that I was bringing in, it was taking them maybe a little longer.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, but it's usually around that 3-4 month mark that they're like, aha, I got it now. Then they spend like a few weeks kicking themselves in the tail because they're like, why did it take me so long to get this? I should have been done this. It's like,
Hmm.
yeah, but okay, we're here now. Right. And so it's about that 3-4 month mark.
And so I would think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you're taking on clients and talking about this power pivot in their career, their first, it's almost like marriage counseling or relationship counseling where you're having to unpack first a couple of layers before we get to, all right,
Hmm.
what are you strong at? We're not here to talk about skills first. Where's your mindset at? Where are your
Hmm.
fears at? Um,
Hmm.
versus they don't even know that they're dealing with that possibly. They're
Hmm.
just like,
Hmm.
I just need to make a jump, and you're like, but why?
Right. Like, what is this gonna do for you? I
Yeah.
had one particular client. She's a phenomenal woman, bright as all get out. And when I met her, she already was like double HR certified. She had all these degrees, and she said it was either between working with you or getting another certification. And I immediately said,
Hmm?
well, what are you doing with the other two you got? Like, what you doing with them, right? But sometimes too, especially with what I found with women of color, is that we find or we attempt to find validation in our education
Hmm.
and in our certification. So we say, okay, let me go out and get another degree. Let me go get another certification because that's what's going to make me more appealing or more the more attractive candidate. And really, I'm like, but you just spent the money and the stress and the time and all that, pulling your hair out, trying to study for stuff. And for what? Like, but so yeah, that's a lot of it.
Yeah, what you just shared just remind me of. I'm not sure if you know or follow her, Christy Rutherford.
Mm-mm.
She's on. I'll connect you to her.
Mhm.
She'd be good for you to talk to because I'll just leave it there. But I'll connect. What you said reminded me of how she operates and helps high performing women out there as well. So
Mhm.
you two are on the same wavelength. So I'll make that connection for you because I think it'd be
I
good for you
love that. Thank
to
you.
have a LinkedIn chat. But what are some of the feedback that these, is it primarily women? Because I know Elevate Her,
All women.
all
It's
women,
all women.
are sharing that they're saying in corporate America, this is why I'm struggling. And is it
Yeah.
primarily, second part to that, is it primarily women of color, or just does it matter?
It's all women of color.
Okay,
Particularly the Elevate Her, we specialize and we focus on women of color, primarily Black women.
awesome.
Because I've been a Black woman my whole life, and that's what I know.
Right,
Okay, I gotta stick to what I know.
right.
Okay. So,
No
but I
variance there.
will tell you, but I will tell you that oftentimes what I hear from them is that because they are the only,
Mm,
it becomes difficult for them when they're in workplaces, right? Because it's like they don't have community in workplaces. It's kind of like you don't have that camaraderie, you don't have that person that you can really lean on. And so one thing that we do is we create community.
mm,
The Elevate Her is all about creating community so that you have this safe place where you can go and you can ask the questions that you need to ask. You can get the support that you need to get. And it's in a way that's going to be uplifting to you. And it's not, oh my God, here you come asking another question, or the fear of if you ask the question, you're going to be seen as being incompetent. And oftentimes I feel like that is what I hear the most from the women that I serve is they'll say, you know what, like I can't ask anybody at work. Like we have a young lady who just literally started a new position this week. And she's newer in the HR. And one thing when we were having our mastermind session, one thing that came up for her was, well, what if they ask me something I don't know? And there's nobody from there. Like I don't feel comfortable asking anybody else, which I get that, right? It's already bad enough to be new, but
mm.
being new and then look like me, like in an environment that does not look like me. That's a whole different layer. I mean, there are. I mean, as much as we want to say that there aren't different experiences in the workplace, there are, right? And so one of the other group members chimed in and she said, okay, that's when you just smile and you send us a DM at the same time and you ask us the question and we give you the answer, right? And I love that just because that's the power of the community. And that is ensuring that though that we continue to succeed, which it's wonderful. And that's what I think they need the most. Most people need, and that's what I needed, and I still have. Like right now, I'm a part of a group called the Foxhole, and we really we hold each other down. So I love it.
It's a statement you said, in that you said, and correct me, that I am the only, or
The
I'm the
only.
only. I'm the only. I think that's
Hmm.
either a combination of a conference,
Hmm.
with that title,
Hmm.
um, it's a couple of day workshops, or a book, or something. But I think that title draws a lot of people, obviously people of color, African
Hmm.
Americans. It will draw us to a larger community. Uh,
Hmm.
that just that term alone, that statement speaks volumes, especially in corporate America.
Hmm. Hmm.
Volumes, like large scale. So I would love, not to put nothing on your plate. Like, I don't want to do that.
Oh, I thank you. I appreciate that. Let me just go ahead and add that too.
Just
Right.
go on, just
So
go and add that for 2022
I'm gonna
or
add that. I just
2023.
put that. I'll work that in some kind of way. Hmm.
Um, what's some of your personal journeys from, as you went through your career, that you
Yeah.
recognize that you didn't know you had to pivot, or pivoted
Yeah.
too late?
Man. Okay. So when I started my career, I was cool. You couldn't tell me nothing. I was making money. Not really. Right. But I thought I was. Okay. I thought I was. I was able to spend it as soon as I got it. But then my one major life shift happened for me was I became a single mom.
Mm,
And at that time, that was a whole pivot situation because it was no more about me, but it was like, hold on, I gotta feed this little dude. Like I gotta feed him, I gotta send him to school, he needs some clothes, like he got habits. He got so it's
yeah,
like
habits.
he got habits, he got things. So it's like I now have to pivot and really put me on the back burner a little bit so that I can make sure that I provide. And then It was like once he got to a certain level, it was like, okay, I got into this rhythm. I got an extra degree because I was like, that's what's gonna make me fantastic now, and didn't know what I was gonna do with it. Then I got in another job and I came off traveling. I didn't know. I'm just like, I just need to do something. And then, I had another major life change. I got married and I was like, oh, wait a minute, hold on. Now I gotta be a wife too. Like, hold on, add that hat, okay? And so that was a pivot because then it was like, what is this thing called work life balance for real, right? It was one thing to have the work life balance with my son, but then it was like, oh, but wait a minute, now you got this additional family. You have this husband and these bonus children now that now you really got to work all this stuff in. And then another life change, we had a remix baby, right? It was like, oh, have one together, right? So then that threw it all, right? So it was like every time it would seem like I would get like going in a good direction,
Mhm.
something would throw me off, right? But then it was always the power of understanding that that was a part of my journey and that I could make my mind up at that point to either A, be stuck and stalled in that, or B, understand that that's part of it and roll with it, right? But keep my eye, so to speak, on the prize. Cliche as it is, but it's always and understanding that the prize is me. Like I'm the prize. Whatever it is that's supposed to come from my life, I'm the prize. Not the title, not none of this stuff.
And I love what you said. You said something pretty powerful, and I want you to unpack that because what you shared was personal things about the pivot. It was
Hmm.
nothing. It was nothing to do with what's happening in the office and corporate or anything like that. It was your personal life that caused you to pivot.
Hmm.
New son. Getting married, found yourself as a single mom. These are all personal items that has nothing to do with the 9 to 5. So
Hmm.
speaking um, to the viewers who are watching it live and folks that'll watch the replay or listen to it, share the areas of where that pivot because they may be thinking only one area, right?
Yeah.
They may be
Yeah.
thinking, well, my work life balance, and I'm not sure if there's such a thing, but um, it's the workforce or the office time is not so bad. I don't need to leave, but not noticing there's some personal things that can be hindering or vice versa. Like talk to folks about where are some areas where you're just like, here can be a pivot. Here's a pin. Stick a pin in that. That can be this.
Yeah. So let's talk about working from home
Hmm.
because I think people think that working from home is actually a good thing. And here's the thing, it can be, but there also has to be boundaries set up with it. Because what I found is when we pivoted because of coronavirus and had to be working from home, like I still had to create boundaries around when I stopped working, right? Because it's so easy just to work all the time because you know what? Set it up in your kitchen, set it up in your bedroom, set it up wherever, right? And it's like, but when do you shut that off?
Hmm.
When do you have conversations with your spouse, partner, what have you, about something other than work? Right? That might be your opportunity to pivot. If all you can talk about is your job, maybe it's your time to pivot, right? I think also when we talk about things like your health and your well being, right? If you are one that you are afraid to take days off from work to care for yourself, right? You don't want to be out sick because, oh, heaven forbid, you be out sick 2, 3, 4 days, right? You're going to come back to all this work. I was literally having this conversation this week with some senior leadership in my organization. I was like, it's a shame to me when people can't take off time to really decompress and really relax and rejuvenate, right? Because you think about it, like I did a whole post about the Sunday scaries. The Sunday scaries are so real for so many people, right? There's this anxiety that happens on Sunday, right? It's a dread because it's like on Monday, here we go. I got to go back into this. And it makes it worse sometimes when it's a long weekend
Yeah.
because you've almost gotten to this artificial, like, comfort that, oh, this is nice. This is what it feels like to be stress free. Then Sunday, whoop, here we go. You start freaking out, head hurting, stomach hurting, like you snapping at folks in your house, right? Like it's all the things. And so my thing is that's a point to pivot, right? If you're in a work environment that is a toxic work environment, where you can't, there's no safety in being able to express your ideas, your thoughts, being a part of solutions in your organization. If things are really hostile, that's a point to pivot, right? Why keep putting yourself through those things? If you're in an environment where you can't grow, you have literally, like, you have these desires to go higher, and you know that you in fact can, but you've hit that ceiling, pivot. It's time to pivot, right? Because then you're sacrificing you and your abilities for what? Time to pivot.
Do you seek counsel during that time and
I
try?
think everybody should. I think everybody should. And here's the thing, like, I got 2, 3 coaches on my team to keep me together. It take a whole lot to deal with me.
It's a whole village to work with
A
Keisha.
whole village to get me together, okay? But I think you do. I think it's important to have, like I talked about, your foxhole. Like, you have to
Mhm.
have people that are in your corner, literally, people that are in your circle, people that can hold you down and cheerlead for you, but somebody that can also get you together and say, wait a minute, what are you thinking about? I think it's important to have all those things, have those people that you can go to and ask questions when you don't know what to do. They can actually give you credible information. Everything we get on the internet is not necessarily credible. But I'm just saying, right?
Correct.
But they can give you those things. So yeah, you should seek wise counsel wherever it is, but find it.
I love that. Love that.
Mhm.
So I want to be mindful of your time
Yeah.
as we go on. So share with folks, where they can connect with you, where they can hear more of your content,
Mhm.
and just soak up as much as Keisha as they can.
Yeah, everybody wants to have a website, and I do have a website, but I do absolutely nothing with it. It is a placeholder. Okay, I'm not just gonna be all the way honest. It's a placeholder because that's what
Look,
you do when you get in business.
I
You
don't have a
build a
web.
website, right? I was like, what do you even do with it? Anyway, most often, you can always find me on LinkedIn. I am literally on LinkedIn probably 6 out of 7 days a week, and in that, there's some kind of content that's coming from me, whether it be video clips, whether it be live video, whether it be posts, all the things. I am always on LinkedIn. You can always find me on LinkedIn. If you go over on Instagram trying to find me, you might find something, but it ain't gonna be a whole lot. Come on to LinkedIn. That's where you'll find me.
Share one or two tips when we talk about the power of pivot. I mean, you shared a whole lot. I mean, you dropped strong advice and takeaways from this. But what would you say as you talking about? Let's go back to your daily routine. I think that
Mm-hmm.
because that plays a part. That plays a major part. You hear people say how you do anything is how you do everything. So,
Mm-hmm.
what would you say for folks that are struggling with a routine? Because I don't think if they don't have some form of routine and how they do something, the pivoting piece, right? They're stuck in their ways. They're not going to shift. They're not going to
Yeah.
change. They're not going to pivot. What would you say to folks who are in that space on how to create a more healthier type of daily routine to get them towards that goal? If that
I
makes
think here's Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I think the first thing is understand this is your routine. So you don't have to compare your routine to what anybody else does, right? You got all these people that, I have people that, like, in my circle, that get up, they work out, they cook breakfast, they take kids, this, and I'm like, listen, that's too many things for me. Okay.
sense.
I'm like, I can do what I can do, right? But I think, first of all, own it as being yours, right? What do you need in order to make you better? And it may not be getting up and getting on your Peloton. That's not what you do. Then don't do it. Okay. Don't go buy a Peloton because somebody else got it in their routine. Don't do that. Okay. But if it means me getting up earlier than everybody else in my house, whether that's 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, just so I can have a moment of peace before anybody asks me to do anything or be anything, let that be what you do as a part of your morning. If it's you sitting down to write out in the morning all of the things that you hope to get done that day. Notice I said hope. I don't like to do lists. What do I hope to get done?
Mhm.
Right? What are my priorities for today? I'm big about writing priorities out and making sure that I am one of my priorities. Like, what do I want to do? Right? Take that time to do that. If it's you meditating, if it's you praying, doing a devotional, whatever it is, but it's things like getting your mind set. Because I always liken it to this. I came up in a manufacturing environment, car manufacturing environment. And I remember one of the engineers used to always say, you never jump in your car. I don't care what temperature it is, even if it's hot outside, you never jump in the car and just go. You never just put the keys in, turn the car on and go. So if y'all been doing that, stop doing that. Okay, you're gonna mess up your car. But what you do is you actually let it run for a minute, right? You get it started and you let the juices flow before you start working it. Same thing with you. Get up early, get it started, get the juices flowing, and go, right? And don't make it a heavy thing. Anytime you make something so difficult, it's hard to keep it going. So if it's a routine that's 15 minutes, 20 minutes, start there. Then as you are feeling more and more comfortable with it, extend it a little bit. Add something else to it. But don't jump out here and go crazy and be throwing out unicorn routines. Don't do that.
Love it. Love it. We're going to leave it right there. We're going to put a pin in that from Miss Nakisha Hicks. Don't go away. I'm going to close this out with a video, but I appreciate it again, your authenticness. And thank you for bringing just Keisha. That's what I'm talking about.
Hey, and the dog. Like, I'm just saying.
What's the dog's name? You got to get some credit.
Marshmallow. Sticky sweet.
Keisha and Marshmallow. Every Wednesday morning, 8 a.m. on the Morning Mindset. Catch up. Thank you so much, Keisha. Hold on for a second.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, everybody. Thanks again for watching another episode of Career Talks. My sole mission is to provide actionable advice for job seekers that will impact their career and ultimately their life. But I need your support. So if you can simply subscribe to the podcast so I can take this message further, I would greatly appreciate it. I look forward to your support, and I'll see you next week.